Hello and welcome to the SRCC podcast. Today's episode of the podcast is a little different than previous episodes. We are going to be talking about different ideas you can try for self-care. Self-care involves taking some time to do activities that make you feel good and support your mental health. Self-care activities can look different for everyone, and there are so many different things that you can do to practice self-care. In this episode, members of the SRCC team will talk a little bit about what they like to do for self-care. We'll be talking about self-care activities we've done for a long time, and also some new ones we've tried recently. Hopefully this episode will give you some ideas of activities you may like to try for yourself. On this episode, you will hear from SRCC staff members David, Danielle, Ruth, and myself, Shauna. So let's begin by hearing from David.
Thank you, Shauna. My name is David Madden. I'm the CEO of the Sligo Ray Crisis Centre. And I have a couple of things just on the topic of self-care that I kind of use occasionally. One is biking, motorcycling, and the other is the occasional seaweed bath. So maybe if I just say a couple of things just about each thing. The seaweed baths, something I do every now and again. It doesn't really occur to me that often, but when it does, it's just the right thing to do. There's two places around here in Sligo that you can do it. One is out in Strandhill via seaweed baths. I've never been there myself, but I hear it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. The one that I've gone to is the one out in Innisgrown. It's called Kilcullen Seaweed Baths. At the end, I'll give you the email or the phone number and stuff like that. It's a lovely thing to do. The seaweed baths. It's good for aches and pains. It's not too expensive. I think it's about €20 or something for as long as you want. And most people get out after 45 minutes or less. It gets quite intense, the heat. But anytime I've done it, I've done it for about half an hour. It's lovely. The seaweed is lovely. It's kind of like olive oil on your skin, and it's really relaxing. You know, it's good for aches and pains, body stress, and it's good for your skin. So I like it. Anytime I've done it, I do it again. They have twin baths, so you can go in with a friend, or they have baths where you can go in with your partner as well, which is nice to do. There's all sorts of options, and it's kind of a sociable thing to do. It's very informal as well. And they show you how to do everything, so there's no big mystique around it. So it's a nice thing to do. So that's Kilcullen Seaweed Baths. Their website is kilcullenseaweedbaths.net. The other place, and their phone number is 096 36238. The other place is Voya Seaweed. And the website is voyaseaweedbaths.com. And their telephone number is 071 916 8686. So I can't vouch for Voya, but I can vouch for Kilcullen. I'd recommend seaweed bath generally. Okay, that's seaweed baths. The other thing that I really like to do for self-care, and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea necessarily, but it's riding my motorcycle. I've been riding motorcycles pretty much all of my life, so I'm a bit of a die-hard biker. I started off on a Honda C70, which is like the old Honda 50s, if anyone remembers them. And over the years, I've upgraded the bike in CC and style, and I've gone through different styles of bikes. But, you know, over and above all the CCs and the styles of bikes, to me, the real benefit of biking is the sense of freedom it gives you. There are other things it does help. It helps your concentration. It helps, it helps you burn some calories as well. Although it looks quite passive sitting on a bike, it's quite a physical activity. Not so physical as a push bike, but it takes effort to manage a bike, particularly bigger bikes, and they can be heavy to maneuver as well. But I suppose the overarching thing about biking for me is there's a big social aspect to it. A lot of my friends are bikers that I've met through biking. And then there's just that sense of freedom going from A to B. It's a lot more than going from A to B. It's how you go from A to B and how you feel while you're doing it is really the benefits. So they're the two kind of self-care things that come to mind for me. One is the seaweed bath and the other is biking. So I hope somebody tries one or other at some point, and I'll leave it there. Thanks, Shauna.
Hi everyone, my name is Danielle Neely and I am the Counselling Coordinator here at the Sligo Rape Crisis Centre, and I wanted to talk today about two different self-care techniques that I personally use. So firstly, I wanted to talk about a self-care technique which I would use quite frequently, which is reading. Books can be used as a self-care technique with an abundance of health benefits. It can reduce stress and even lower your heart rate and ease the tension in your muscles. It can also provide a healthy escape into another world or provide more understanding of an issue or even ourselves. So depending on what you like to read, it can be used in many different ways. Reading is always something I have enjoyed ever since I was a child. I loved having the ability to delve into a book and be transported into a completely different world for a period. As I got older, I have used reading as a conscious self-care technique. I have a reading nook set up in my home where I go when I need my time, and everyone within my house knows I have delved into a book. I have it set up with good calming lighting, soft tactile cushions and blankets, and of course, will always have snacks and water on hand. I personally love fiction, specifically a psychological thriller. I enjoy the twists and turns and surprises a good novel can provide. My husband can hear me gasping from time to time and he thinks something has happened, whereas I'm just involved in the book. I also share my recommendations with my mum, who has a similar interest, which has helped deepen our bond as well. Reading can be used by anyone, and there are so many different ways to do it. You can use a physical book or an electronic book on numerous different devices, or of course listen to an audiobook. I always recommend people to ask others for recommendations, as you can find real gems by talking to your friends, family, or even professionals depending on what you're looking for. I do also like to plug secondhand books or using your local library. I have always been a fan of reusing books instead of buying new every time, but of course, that's just me. Secondly, I wanted to touch on a new self-care technique that I have been hearing more and more about. However, I had never tried before, and this is Reiki. Reiki is a form of energy healing that originated in Japan in the early 20th century. This practice is based around the idea that we have all unseen life force energy that flows through our bodies, and using Reiki can reduce stress and promotes healing by encouraging a healthy flow of energy. Reiki can be used for a number of different issues such as anxiety, pain management and depression, just to name a few. I had been having trouble sleeping recently and I thought I would try this practice. Unfortunately, I had become ill with the flu, which you may hear from my voice today, but the Reiki practitioner informed me that this practice could be completed via Zoom, which was fantastic. I found the practice as a whole extremely calming and relaxing. It brought me into my body in a trauma-informed way and brought me to concentrate on my breath. I personally found it extremely helpful for my sleep, and I did notice that I slept really well afterwards. I will be booking in again with her for sure. If this is something you would like to look into more for yourself, one way of finding a qualified Reiki practitioner is by word of mouth. Local practitioners of other therapies such as acupuncture, reflexology or massage usually know other practitioners by reputation and may be able to offer names. Another option is to look up the International Association of Reiki Professionals, or the IARP.org website. Thank you. Hope you've enjoyed.
You're listening to the SRCC podcast, and today members of the SRCC team are discussing ideas for self-care. Next, we'll hear from Ruth.
Hello, my name is Ruth and I'm a project worker at SRCC. So I'll talk about two different types of self-care that I would use. The first is very simply trying to just sit on the couch with no screen. So to take a break from social media, from emails, from television, from the constant bombardment with images that most of us face these days, and really simply just sitting. I might not even listen to music. Often I'll be joined by my cat. She might sit in my lap, which encourages me to stay put for longer and not get distracted. And I find it's just a good way to just clear my mind. I'm not specifically meditating, but I'm not allowing myself to fill the time with whatever it may be, household chores or or work or anything like that. So it's super simple, but I find that really helpful to just reset and to ground myself a little bit. Another thing that I tried recently is, so because I'm self-employed, I have to keep track of a lot of receipts, of invoices, of paperwork, which means it piles up and up. I'm not very organized. So what I decided to do was go into this drawer in my house that I have just been piling these pieces of paper into and shutting the drawer, and I went through them. I set the scene for myself, put on some nice music, and I just went through all my pieces of paper one by one. I also got myself a folder, which is pretty colours to just make the whole thing more aesthetically pleasing, because I really didn't want to do this. And it sounds deeply boring, but I think relatable, that these minor things, this kind of life admin that can just build up. And it was like a low level source of anxiety. I knew that I had to deal with it, but I really didn't want to. As a friend put it, you don't realize how locked out of your own space you become when you're holding on to these things. So yes, I went through the drawer, and then I got so into it that I went through all my other drawers and all my old folders, took out every document that was no longer relevant and burnt them. And it felt cathartic and calming, and yeah, just something, a bit of life admin that I would recommend.
Hello, I'm Shauna. I'm a project worker here at SRCC, and today I'm going to be talking about journaling and expressive writing, and also drumming as the two self-care ideas. So I'm going to start off with talking a little bit about journaling and expressive writing, because that's something I've been doing for a long time, and it's something I think that can be so helpful when it comes to self-care, because getting your thoughts out there on paper, just letting the pen flow, or maybe you like to use, technology, just externalizing your feelings, getting them out, can really help with kind of just, first of all, freeing your mind a little bit, but also kind of like just allowing you to maybe analyze some things or just connect with the feelings that you might be having at the moment. So one thing I always really like to do is to free write. So I'll say to myself, okay, well, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to set an alarm on my phone, and I'm just going to write whatever comes on the page for 5 minutes, whether it is, I don't know, it could have been lyrics to the song I'm listening to, or it could be, really deep feelings that I'm having. You just kind of let your pen move for those 5 minutes, and there's no need to be concerned about like spelling or grammar. I mean, half the time you can't read your own writing when you do something like that, but it can just be really good to kind of link in with yourself. So I always think that's a really good one. Especially it can help with kind of planning as well. You can do, I suppose, what you call a brain dump, and get everything that's in your head out onto the piece of paper, and then just kind of maybe take a minute to reflect about what needs to be done when, and it can be really helpful. Expressive writing is also a really good way to do it. I know in the last episode of the podcast, we had an episode that was all about poetry therapy with J.R. Campbell. So that is another example of a really good type of self-care practice that you can include in your day, just like using poetry or prose or whatever way you'd like to kind of, I suppose, connect with your feelings and maybe express some of them. So the next bit I'm going to talk about is something new that I did that I hadn't done before. So earlier this year, I attended a drumming workshop, which was, I suppose, it was something that I had never done before. I really do like music, but I hadn't done anything like this. So it was all kind of about like rhythmic drumming, and kind of really getting connected with the music and the sounds, and even just the practice almost of like hitting your hands off the drums, or like using the sticks, kind of really getting into the percussion side of things. It's really, really great. So I did it as part of a group and everyone got really connected and we kind of were doing different songs and kind of following each other's rhythms. And it was just such a great way to kind of ground yourself and really kind of get lost in the moment, because I think that's one of the most important things for self-care, is just to be able to kind of allow yourself the space to, you know, connect with something different and also just really do something that maybe is like a little bit outside your comfort zone sometimes. It can just really reinvigorate you, and it can really just allow you to connect with parts of yourself that maybe you don't always connect with, or you don't always spend time with. So that was a really good one. I think it just really allowed me, and I suppose the other people in the group as well, to just, I suppose you almost let loose when you have the drumsticks in your hand. You kind of you're beating off the drumsticks, you're creating all these rhythms and all these sounds, and it just it's very tangible, it's very active, and it's just a really nice way to spend a couple of hours. So those are my two pieces of self-care. Thank you for listening to the SRCC podcast. As we said at the beginning of the episode, self-care looks different for everyone, and what is most important is to find a practice that suits you and fits your lifestyle. There are so many options out there, and maybe some of the self-care ideas we discussed today are ones that you may like to introduce into your own self-care practice.